Good day, ladies and gentlemen, minus the ladies, since there's not a chance any of them are here.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that
I
you're
just
fine.
played my first ever over-the-board FIDE tournament, and not just that, but I also played my first official brilliant move in a notated game that I'm very, very excited to share with you guys, and I hope that you share that enthusiasm and the absolute thrill I felt playing it over the board. So let's not waste time and let's get straight into it. So for the first game, we have the black pieces against an Asian prodigy, a 1600. I think he is only 12 years old. I mean, maybe not a prodigy in the sense that he's not like 2000. It's a bit daunting, and he is Asian, so you already know he's a genius. Anyways, we have the black pieces, and our opponent plays c4, the English opening, which, to be honest, I have never really prepped against, but I wasn't really happy to play into something that he probably knows very well. He's probably studied all the theory. So I play what I play against, d4, which is just knight f6, and go for the same setup I normally play. Our opponent immediately went for this fianchetto system, so did I, developing his knight all theory. And now here I thought for a second, what is the best way to continue? I can castle, but then he's going to start chucking his pawns in the center, and I'm really going to lose control over the center, and I can't. You can fianchetto, that's fine, without playing a central pawn move. But now it is time to play for some control. So my opponent correctly played e4, stamping out that, and now I was scared that he can go e5 on the next move, and my knight has nowhere to go except back or here. And a knight on the rim is grim, so we strike back in the center, and here my opponent correctly developed his knight to e2, not to f3, blocking the bishop, which it needs to stay in contact with, especially to stop me from playing d5 because of the amount of defenders. And here I castled, my opponent castled, and maybe I could have gone rook e8, just slow play it, but I went d6 here to develop my bishop and my knight. Otherwise I'd have to maybe go like this, but my bishop has to open up. So d6 all made sense to me, and now I was really thinking my opponent would strike in the center with d4 here, which must be the best move. Nothing else is really close. Rook b1 is the second best move, but d4 to crack open the center. He played h3, which I thought was a bit too slow. And here I just developed my bishop, continuing my plan, putting some pressure on the pawn, and this forces him to go d3, not d4. So a minor win for me, I thought, in that I forced him to go here, not here, and now there's no real pressure as of right now. Here there's this beautiful little nuance that I missed. So you can go b5 here, and it looks like you just hang a pawn that he can take and you lose the pawn. And what you need to notice here is what are two different things that can be attacked simultaneously, like hence a fork, and that is this pawn and the knight. And it's quite a beautiful idea that, if he retreats, we start actually getting into white's king's camp, which is definitely worth the b pawn, which is doing absolutely nothing in our future plans. And he can't take it. Taking gives back an advantage just due to the threats that will start to come. He has to go f3 here, which I'll say it's a hard move to find, but it really makes sense, and noticing everything is defended. But yeah, our opponent would have to dig deep to defend that position. So b5 is a nice, a cute little idea here. Anyways, definitely didn't find that. And what's crazy is that this is basically a blunder. My whole plan here was to go d5, because obviously I can't go here now because I simply lose a piece. So when I went bishop e6, like adding another defender, and obviously he didn't add another defender to the square. I thought, now I can play d5. Which pawn do you think you should take with you? One is winning, one is drawing. It is taking with the e pawn. The reason is very simple, is that it opens the bishop up, whereas if you take with this pawn, the bishop isn't exactly in contact. Takes, and now the trick here is not to take back and get this massive piece trade. It is to play the remarkable move d4. Now, the trick with this move is obviously he's threatening this and, you know, an absolute munch storm. So here we would have to go e4, but that also loses a pawn because we take, and then we lose this pawn, and then we're down a pawn. Whereas if we don't push, if we don't push and we take, then that's even worse. And it's +2 for white because it takes, and now the detail that I want to explain is that it's all about the bishop being open. The problem is we can't take here because we lose our rook and a pawn. So it's just an incredible move, d4. Not taking back, which all, I'm going to say, like under 1700 would just snatch this pawn. Or just play another move. This move d4 is quite beautiful. And noticing this and all that combined. The difference is, if you take with the c pawn, you don't have d4 here, because I can just take this pawn with the knight, whereas I couldn't before because there was no pawn here, because the pawn had taken. And now, you know, if you take, my bishop's open, so like my knight's not under fire when it was here, and we have a game. So it's a very subtle detail. Both my Asian prodigy and I missed. He took back, and now he played bishop g5, pinning, trying to threaten to take with all these defenders. And the only move to give black an advantage is, of course, d4, which I played. And now he played the move that I was actually calculating. I didn't see that you can still go, well, you can still go knight d5, and this is fine for him because this pawn is always protected, and it's not a bad position at all. It stops our knight from going to where it wants to. However, he played knight a4, which I thought he would, because it makes sense. If I like attack, his whole idea is to come to c5 and trade the bishop, or at least put pressure on this pawn. So the best move according to the computer is to stop the knight from coming here, which was my idea. I'm going to stop the knight from coming here. So I was looking at queen d6, which is the second best move. But knight a5 is the best move, just cleanly stopping the knight from jumping to c5 and developing the knight at the same time. However, I played the third best move, which is h6. And here my opponent took. And I should have taken back with the queen. I'm not exactly sure why I didn't. I just thought here, and it's ugly, I'd have to go bishop c8. But the computer thinks bishop c8 is a great idea. It's not flimsy. You're going to develop the knight now, and you have a great position. And you're going to kick the knight out eventually. Here I took with a bishop and allowed knight c5. I could still go bishop c8 here, with the idea to save the bishop and protect the pawn at the same time. But I went queen b6, saying I'm protecting the pawn, I'm hitting the knight, and I'm going to recapture the bishop with the queen, which is exactly what happened. And here, when I played this move, I realized this whole time I've ignored the fact that black has this idea to go f4, opening his rook and crashing through the center, even pushing for f5 looks abysmal for black. However, my opponent slow played it, tickling the h6 pawn. The best move is h5. The second best by fraction is bishop g7, which I played, getting my bishop out of the way of the rook, preparing to play f5 myself potentially in some positions, although not yet, as we don't want to be taken. Hitting the queen and hitting the pawn would be terrible. Now my opponent found this idea. Of course he did. He's a genius, an Asian prodigy that can only be beaten by brilliant moves apparently. And here I developed the knight. It wanted the knight to come here. The difference is quite subtle, just bringing it this way, saying the knight doesn't actually have a future this side of the board, but has a future this side, which kind of makes sense since my pieces are mainly clustered on this side. Here my opponent sort of saw a ghost. I don't know what he saw. My knight can never go here unless I like really prep it. So he made this move a3 to stop it from happening, but this move ultimately introduced a lot of weakness here, where my queen could go exerting pressure on the weaknesses. And a3 is a bad positional move. Here he could have gone f5, and I would have had to move my queen. The best move is queen e7, because of course I'm not taking opening up his bishop, which is going to become, it was a dead piece, now it's going to be the main character, and you know, I might be getting done for. So here after he played a3, he allowed me now to start preventing this move f5 with, I played the best move quite proud, 97. I mean, what else to do in this position? You could maybe start this, but it's quite slow. And here my opponent played queen b4, obviously hitting the weakness, keeping contact with the knight. And here I'm proud to have found the second best move, a nice idea that if you take, you're going to lose this game now, because we are going to win this. We're going to exert crazy pressure and we'll win that pawn back immediately. It's not even a pawn sack. But the nice detail here is that you don't take immediately. Taking is drawing. You go rook c8, make him come back, shuffle the rooks like this, and then you can get both rooks on the second rank, like something, and then he'd have to play like this, and we can just keep on the best moves here, and we just continue to bulldoze, which would have been a lovely position. So after queen d4, hit his queen. The prodigy, of course, is not taking the bait. He runs back to the good boy d2 square, and here we bring our rook to the open file, playing some principled chess. The computer always wants to push these flank pawns as far as possible to just clamp, and it makes some sense. But here again, this pawn is bait with this. So here he brought his rook to the file, not giving me a chance to coordinate my pieces on these weak squares. And here I played the best move, b6. Obviously now that this pawn is just hanging because I can't go rook c2 with the fork, because obviously the rook takes. So now we need to protect this pawn. And h4 would have been too weakening because the queen goes here, hitting, and no. Now my opponent started to get a bit greedy. He started to get a bit aggressive, should I say. And here the best move is to take the rook immediately and then take here. I played it the opposite way around, which still gives black a minus 0.9 advantage. And here I was very shocked to see queen takes. My opponent had played like perfect chess up until this point, or nearly perfect chess, but taking with the knight is much more natural because you hit the queen, you develop a piece that was always weak on this file, and it just makes a lot of sense. But he took with the queen, and now I should have played g5 immediately, punishing this, stopping him from expanding, and now we have equal amount of space, should I say. But here now I took, and black has now a -2 advantage with g5. I missed this move and I just saw this fork. I saw, look in the position, I always tell myself, look in the position for your opponent's weaknesses. Both these pawns, the knights, all undefended. So queen b3 I thought did the trick. But he just has this move, which he played, queen e2. A beautiful defensive move. Holds absolutely everything in every situation. And now my plan is it's hard to see what to do. So I now went g5. I now saw this move clamping down. But now he can go rook c4 and start going after my own weaknesses, which I have quite a few, by the way. However, he went rook c7, and you don't want to attack a piece that is already not where it wants to be. Like, this knight does not want to be. It's not doing its job, so it's going to move anyway. So I went knight g6, which is the second best move. Like, the knight wants to go to these squares anyway, all of these dark squared holes. And my opponent started trying to just go after my queen, trying to kick me out the camp. Here, queen e6 was potentially the best with sort of infiltration moves like this. I went queen b5 to keep in contact with the p. We can transfer this way like this. So it's just a flexible move, I thought, and it is the best move apparently. And now my opponent just, see, you can't be doing this. You can't be going back and forth. Yes, you kicked my queen out and now you're hitting the pawn again, but you've lost some time. Here I went bishop e5, hitting the rook, starting to clamp down on these dark squared weaknesses because he's pushed all these pawns. Whereas you see, my bishop is so much better than his, because even though we both have the exact same holes in the position, his light squared bishop is not here to take advantage of it, whereas mine is. My opponent went rook c4, obviously threatening to win the pawn, protect it, pretty simple. He now hit my queen, and I retreated to e7, still keeping contact. But there was really no other moves for me. The computer thinks queen a6 is the best, but I would never put my queen in a box like this. It makes no sense to me. Now my opponent played the best move, queen c2, trying to take advantage of this open file. And here I got a bit hasty in my attack. I thought, okay, well, I need to take advantage of these dark squares, and my knight doesn't want to sit on g6, it wants to get into action. And this is just a bad move because he can trade, and now I can only really take advantage of these dark squares with two pieces. One bishop alone, like, looks nice, but it does nothing. And he played rook c6, forking me. When he played this move, I was like, I'm gonna lose this game. This is a massive pawn fork. When he gets this pawn, all my weaknesses fall. This pawn's even worse by my weak king. So I played the move king g7, protecting this pawn. The computer thinks queen e7 is best. If you take, I can go bishop e3, and then maybe get in on these dark squares with moves like queen b4. But to me, hanging this pawn is suicide. So I went king g7 with the idea that he can't really take here either, because now I get the open file, and all of a sudden his king is actually getting mated. Like, he's going to lose significant material. Like f1 and it's mate and 8 with queen c7 hitting and getting in here. So he can't take this pawn, and I've stopped him from taking this pawn. So I thought king g7 was genius, and bishop f3 is the best move that no one's ever playing. So my opponent went in here, trying to further tickle, maybe getting on these light squares in the future with a shuffle like this. And here now I saw goes, and I protected this pawn, which is still not a threat because of this. And so he hit it again, and the problem is, if I defend here with a move like queen b7, I just thought he can either like get in, or e5 is quite deadly. You can't take this pawn obviously, and now the bishop's open, and I don't exactly want to sit in a little box here protecting backwards pawns all day long. So when he went here, I played this very subtle move, Queen e7, which is the best move according to the engine, not protecting the pawn. Now, there's a bit of bait here, because obviously this pawn can now be taken, or can it? Ladies and gentlemen, why can this pawn not be taken? Our queen can't infiltrate here. The queen is controlling it nicely. So what is the problem with taking? My opponent took instantly, and after the game, sure, I mean he is 12 or 13, and he looked like he wanted to cry, but he was so harsh on himself, saying he should have seen this, he should have seen this, and he just kept on repeating that. But he snatched his pawn, which I think like 90% of chess players would do. And you can't see the eval bar, but it just went from zeros to minus 6.5 for black, which is game over. And you know, you may think the rook is hanging and you're going to win a piece, and taking back is terrible because now all the weaknesses are exposed. So what is the winning move? There's a brilliant move for black that wins the game on the spot. You can, it's two moves, it's just the order you're going to play, it doesn't really matter. They're both exactly -7, -7, both moves. So the one I chose was the bishop check. Now, if you go here, if you come up, you get forked. You lose your rook, just cleanly. If you go here, you are almost like tempting fate, you're getting mated. And if you go king h1, you sack the rook. You sack the rook and you go queen c7. My first ever brilliant move. I felt so happy playing this. When I actually played this move, all I saw was perpetual check. I saw takes, check here, and repeat. Like this. I saw a perpetual check, giving up the rook, and I was happy to take a draw because at that point all my pawns were falling and I was going to be down 2 pawns. However, as I played this move, I realized, hang on a second, there's a naughty mate here. My opponent took the bishop and oh my, I couldn't even contain my smile. I played the check, he went up, and it's mate in 1. Such a beautiful, geometrically perfect checkmate. One of the nicest mates I've ever had in my life. Just taking full advantage of these dark squares, controlling in every manner possible. It's not even about the rook. The king is just dead in the corner. And yeah, my Mr. Aleks Guo was heartbroken, and I was in euphoria. But this was the third game of the day. First game, second game, I won and lost respectively. Played some terrible chess, but after this one, I was feeling really confident on 2 out of 3. And yeah, just unbelievable win. If you've watched this far, you really are one of the real ones, and I appreciate you guys so much. If you could please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Comment whatever you want to. I love you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.